The fence went up on a Tuesday morning. I stood on my porch with my coffee, watching the construction crew hammer post after post into the ground, and I couldn't help but smile. Behind me, through the window, I could hear Clara's voice rising in pitch, that particular tone she used when things weren't going her way. My son Matthew was trying to calm her down, but his words were drowned out by her indignation. You're probably wondering how a 74-year-old retired engineer ended up building a fence to lock his own family out of his beach house. Trust me, I wondered the same thing. But sometimes, when people mistake your kindness for weakness, you have to remind them that you still have teeth. Let me back up. My name is Harold Drayton, and 6 months ago, I bought a little white cottage in Oakshore Bay with money I'd saved for 46 years. It had peeling blue shutters, a porch that faced the ocean, and enough peace to make me forget every late night I'd spent fixing broken machinery at Harrison Industries. After my wife Linda passed 6 years back, I promised myself I'd find a place where I could hear her laughter in the wind and feel her presence in every sunset. Oakshore was that place. For 3 weeks, it was paradise. I'd wake up to the sound of waves, walk barefoot on the sand, and spend my evenings reading on the porch with nothing but seagulls for company. No deadlines. No stress. Just me and the memories of a woman who made life worth living. Then my son called. Have you ever had someone in your family completely overstay their welcome? Drop a comment below and let me know, because what happened next will make your blood boil. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Dad, Matthew said on that phone call, his voice cheerful and light. Clara and I thought we'd visit for a few days. You know, to see your new place. I should have heard the warning bells right then. That phrase, for a few days, should have been written in red ink with flashing lights around it. But I was lonely, and Matthew was my only son, so I said the words that would come back to haunt me. Of course. You're both always welcome. They showed up that Saturday in a gleaming black SUV that looked like it cost more than my first house. I was on the porch waiting, wearing my good shirt, excited to show them around. The engine cut off, and Matthew stepped out first, giving me that familiar grin that reminded me of when he was 10 years old. Then Clara emerged. Then their twin boys. Then Clara's teenage niece. Then Clara's sister. And finally, I'm not making this up, Clara's mother, a woman who looked at my cottage the way you'd look at a gas station bathroom. 7 people climbed out of that SUV. My beach house had 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. Dad, I hope it's okay, Matthew said, laughing in that nervous way that told me he knew exactly how not okay this was. They just needed a little getaway too. I stood there, frozen, watching this parade of relatives haul suitcases and coolers and beach toys up my porch steps like they were moving in. My peaceful retirement cottage suddenly looked like a refugee camp. But what could I say? I was old, alone, and too polite to tell my own son he'd crossed a line. So I smiled. Sure, I said, my jaw tight. The more the merrier. Merry is the last word I'd use to describe what came next. Within 2 hours, my quiet sanctuary turned into chaos. Clara's mother complained that the guest room mattress was too firm. Her sister set up a Bluetooth speaker by the porch and started blasting music that made my teeth hurt. The twin boys tracked sand through every room like they were on a mission to coat my floors in beach. And Clara walked into my kitchen like she owned it. She opened drawers, rearranged my utensils, moved my coffee mugs to a different cabinet, and even had the nerve to label my food containers with a label maker she'd brought from home. Dad, you really should get a dishwasher installed, she said the next morning, sipping coffee from Linda's favorite mug, the one with the faded sunflower on it that I hadn't let anyone else touch in 6 years. This place has so much potential if we just updated it a bit. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not anger yet. Just a deep, quiet sadness that someone could be so blind to what mattered. It's fine as it is, Clara, I said softly. She gave me that polite little smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes, and nodded. "We'll see." That night, I sat on the porch alone while the house buzzed with noise behind me. I stared at the waves rolling in under the moonlight and thought about Linda. She would have known what to do. She always did. But she wasn't here, and I was too tired to fight. If I'd known what I was about to overhear a week later, I would have kicked them out that very first night. What would you have done if your family showed up uninvited with a whole crew? Would you have spoken up right away, or would you have stayed silent like I did? Drop your answer in the comments. I need to know I'm not the only one who's been through this. The gold watch they gave me weighed almost nothing. I remember holding it in my hand on my last day at Harrison Industries, turning it over under the fluorescent lights of the conference room while my manager gave a speech about dedication and service. 46 years I'd given that company. 46 years of grease-stained hands, late nights fixing machines that nobody else could figure out, weekends sacrificed because a production line went down and they needed me. And what I got in return was a watch that probably cost $50 and a handshake from a man who couldn't remember my first name. "We appreciate everything you've done, Henry," he'd said. "It's Harold," I corrected, forcing a smile. He didn't even blink. Just nodded and moved on to cutting the cake. I wasn't bitter though. Not really. Bitterness takes energy, and at 74, I'd learned to save mine for things that mattered. What mattered was that I was finally done. No more alarm clocks at 5 in the morning. No more crawling under conveyor belts that hadn't been cleaned in a decade. No more being the guy everyone called when something broke but nobody remembered when bonuses came around. I drove home that evening with the watch in my glove compartment and a strange lightness in my chest. Freedom, I realized, feels a lot like fear at first. For nearly half a century, my identity had been wrapped up in that job. Now I was just Harold. Retired. 74. Alone. Linda would have known how to celebrate. She would have made my favorite pot roast, poured me a glass of wine I wouldn't finish, and told me stories about all the trips we were finally going to take. But Linda had been gone for 6 years, and the house we'd shared for 43 years felt too big and too quiet without her. That's when I started thinking about Oakshore Bay. I'd seen the listing online a few months earlier, a small white cottage with blue shutters, sitting right on the edge of the water. The photos showed a porch that wrapped around the front, a tiny kitchen with windows that faced the sunrise, and a backyard that opened straight onto the beach. It wasn't fancy. The paint was chipped. The floors were old wood that creaked when you walked. But something about it called to me. "You finally did it, Harry," I could almost hear Linda saying, her voice soft and teasing. "You finally slowed down." I called the realtor the next day. The process took 6 weeks, inspections, paperwork, negotiations with a seller who didn't want to let it go. But I didn't care how long it took. That cottage represented something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. A second chapter. A place where I could breathe without the weight of expectations pressing down on my shoulders. When I finally got the keys, I drove out to Oakshore alone. The town was small, the kind of place where people still waved at strangers and the local diner knew your order after 2 visits. I pulled up to the cottage just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that Linda would have called God showing off. I walked through every room slowly, running my hands along the walls, imagining where I'd put my favorite chair, which window I'd sit by in the mornings. The bedroom had a view of the ocean, and I stood there for a long time, listening to the waves crash against the shore. For the first time since Linda died, I felt like I could finally rest. I spent the first 3 weeks in that cottage like a man who'd been holding his breath for decades and finally remembered how to exhale. Mornings started with coffee on the porch, watching the sun climb over the water. I'd walk along the beach, collecting shells and nodding at the other early risers. Afternoons were for small projects, fixing a loose board here, painting a window frame there. Evenings were mine to waste however I wanted. Sometimes I'd read. Sometimes I'd just sit and watch the sky change colors. Nobody asked me for anything. Nobody needed me to fix their problems. Nobody expected me to be anyone other than Harold, a retired man enjoying the peace he'd earned. It was perfect. And then, on a Thursday morning in late spring, my phone rang. "Dad." Matthew's voice came through, bright and casual. "How's the beach house treating you?" "Good," I said, smiling. "Real good, son." "That's great. Hey, listen, Clara and I were talking, and we thought it might be nice to come visit for a few days. You know, see the place, spend some time together." I should have asked questions. "How many days exactly?" "Just the two of you. Do you need me to prepare anything?" But I was happy to hear from him, and the idea of having my son under my roof again, even temporarily, felt like a gift. "Of course," I said. "You're both always welcome." Those 5 words. "You're both always welcome." I've replayed them in my head 1,000 times since, wondering if things would have been different if I just said, "Let me check my calendar," or "Maybe next month would be better." But I didn't. And when that SUV pulled into my driveway 3 days later, packed to the roof with luggage and people I didn't invite, I realized something important. I thought my hardest workdays were over. But my real test was just pulling into the driveway. Have you ever said yes to something small, only to have it turn into something massive? Let me know in the comments, because what I agreed to that day almost cost me everything. The SUV door opened, and my son stepped out first. Matthew looked good, older than I remembered, a little heavier around the middle, but still my boy. He had my eyes and Linda's smile, and when he walked toward me with his arms open, I felt that familiar warmth that only a father knows. We hugged on the porch, and for just a second, everything felt right. Then the back doors opened. Clara emerged in oversized sunglasses and a white linen dress that looked like it cost more than my water bill. She didn't walk toward me. She surveyed. Her eyes moved across the cottage, the porch, the peeling paint, the old rocking chair I'd dragged out from the shed. I watched her lips press into a thin line, not quite a frown, but not approval either. "Hi, Dad," she said, her voice sweet but distant, like she was greeting a distant cousin at a wedding. "Clara," I nodded, trying to match her energy. "Good to see you." Before I could say anything else, 2 boys tumbled out of the back seat, both around 8 years old, identical in every way except the color of their shirts. They didn't look at me. Didn't say hello. Just bolted straight for the beach like wild animals released from a cage. "Boys," Matthew called after them. "Come say hi to Grandpa." They didn't even turn around. Then came a teenage girl with headphones on, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up at me for half a second, gave a bored nod, and walked past me into my house without asking. A woman in her 30s followed, Clara's sister, I assumed, based on the matching designer handbag and the same tight smile. She at least said, "Nice place," though her tone suggested otherwise. And finally, moving slowly and dramatically, Clara's mother stepped out of the passenger seat. She was a tall woman with silver hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She looked at my cottage, then at me, then back at the cottage, and sighed like she'd just been asked to sleep in a barn. "Well," she said flatly, "it's quaint." Quaint. That word hung in the air like an insult wrapped in politeness. 7 people. 7. I stood there on my porch, watching them unload suitcase after suitcase, cooler after cooler, bags of groceries, beach chairs, boogie boards, and even a portable grill. My little 2-bedroom cottage suddenly looked like a hotel lobby during spring break. "Dad, I hope it's okay," Matthew said again, and this time I caught the guilt in his voice. "They just needed a getaway too. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was. I didn't know how you show up to someone's house with a small army and act like it's no big deal. But Matthew was standing there with that apologetic smile, and Clara was already inside rearranging my throw pillows, and what was I supposed to do? Kick them out. Sure, I said, my voice flatter than I intended. The more the merrier. Clara's sister laughed. I love your attitude, Harold. So chill. Chill. Right. Within the first hour, my peaceful cottage turned into something unrecognizable. The boys tracked sand through every room. Not just a little sand, full footprints of it, leading from the front door to the kitchen to the bathroom to the bedrooms. Clara's sister set up a Bluetooth speaker on the porch and started blasting pop music loud enough to make the neighbors 3 houses down turn their heads. Clara's mother claimed the guest bedroom, the one I'd carefully prepared with fresh sheets and a vase of wildflowers, and immediately started complaining. This mattress is too firm, she announced, standing in the doorway like she was filing a formal complaint. Do you have a topper? No, ma'am, I said politely. But I can see if. Never mind. I'll manage. She closed the door in my face. The teenage niece disappeared into the second bedroom without a word, headphones still on, and I realized I didn't even know her name. Matthew and Clara took the living room couch, which folded out into a bed, and suddenly my entire house was occupied. I stood in the hallway, holding a broom I'd grabbed to sweep up the sand, and felt like a guest in my own home. Dad, where do you keep the wine glasses? Clara called from the kitchen. I walked in to find her elbow deep in my cabinets, pulling out dishes and rearranging them on the counter. Top shelf, left side, I said. She frowned. Why would you keep them way up there? That doesn't make sense. It's where I've always kept them. Well, I'm moving them down here. Easier access. She didn't ask. She just did it. I watched her reorganize my kitchen, the one Linda and I had set up together 40 years ago, and felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just a quiet discomfort that I couldn't quite name. Dad, you really should get a dishwasher installed, Clara said, not looking at me. This place has so much potential if we just modernized it a bit. Potential. Modernized. As if my home was a project that needed fixing. It's fine as it is, I said, my voice quieter than I meant. Clara glanced at me with that smile again, the one that wasn't really a smile. We'll see. That night, I tried to reclaim some peace. I made myself a sandwich and took it out to the porch, hoping to watch the sunset like I'd done every evening since I moved in. But Clara's sister was out there, FaceTiming someone on speakerphone, and the boys were throwing a football dangerously close to my rocking chair. I sat down anyway, balancing my plate on my lap, and tried to tune it all out. Grandpa, can you move? One of the twins said, not unkindly, just matter of fact. You're in the way. I looked up at him, this 8-year-old kid who didn't know me, didn't care to know me, and I realized something. I'd been erased. Not loudly. Not violently. Just slowly, quietly, like someone turning down the volume on a song until you can't hear it anymore. I moved my chair to the side. The boy didn't say thank you. That night, I lay in my bed, the only space in the house that still felt like mine, and stared at the ceiling. I could hear Clara's mother snoring through the wall. I could hear the boys arguing in the other room. I could hear Clara and Matthew whispering in the living room, though I couldn't make out the words. The waves were still crashing outside, but I couldn't hear them anymore. And that's when I realized the terrible truth. By nightfall, I realized they weren't here to visit. They were here to move in. Would you have spoken up by now? Or would you have stayed quiet and hoped they'd leave on their own? Comment below, because it's about to get so much worse. They didn't leave. Day 3 turned into day 5. Day 5 turned into a week. Every morning I'd wake up hoping to hear the sound of suitcases zipping shut, car doors closing, goodbyes being said. Instead, I'd hear Clara's mother complaining about the water pressure, or the boys fighting over the television remote, or Clara's sister singing off-key in the shower at 7 in the morning. My cottage stopped being mine. The twins treated it like a playground. They'd run through the house in wet bathing suits, leave damp towels on my furniture, and spill juice on the floor without a second thought. I'd clean up one mess, and 10 minutes later there'd be another. Clara's niece never left the second bedroom except to raid the fridge, and even then she wouldn't speak, just grunt and retreat back into her cave with her phone glued to her hand. But it was Clara who really got under my skin. She didn't just stay in my house. She tried to redesign it. One afternoon, I came back from a walk to find her in the kitchen with a tape measure and a notebook. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Just taking measurements," she said brightly. "I was thinking, if we knocked out this wall, the kitchen would flow so much better into the living room. Really open up the space." I stared at her. "You want to knock out a wall? Just an idea." She waved her hand dismissively. "You don't have to decide now. But think about it, this place could be worth so much more with a few updates." Worth more. There it was again. That language. That mindset. My home wasn't a place to live. It was an investment. A project. A thing to be flipped and sold. "I'm not knocking out any walls, Clara," I said firmly. She gave me that smile. "Okay, Dad. Just trying to help." Help. That word was starting to sound like an insult. The disrespect wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was quiet. Subtle. Like when Clara started referring to the house as ours. "We should get a new coffee maker for our place," she said one morning. Our place. Or when Matthew asked if I minded if we invited some of Clara's friends over for dinner. We. I wasn't part of the we. I was just the guy who owned the deed. Mealtimes were the worst. Clara would cook, without asking, and take over my entire kitchen like she was running a restaurant. She'd use every pot, every pan, every utensil I owned, and then leave the cleanup for me. If I tried to help, she'd shoo me away. "Relax, Dad. You're retired. Let us handle it." But us never cleaned up. I'd wake up the next morning to a sink full of dishes, counters covered in crumbs, and a trash can overflowing with takeout containers. One evening, I worked up the nerve to say something. "Clara," I said gently, standing in the kitchen doorway. "I appreciate you cooking, but could we maybe clean up as we go? It's a small kitchen, and Dad." She turned to me with that patient, condescending tone people use with children. "I've got it under control. Don't stress." She didn't have it under control. She had my kitchen destroyed. But I didn't push. I just nodded and walked away, feeling smaller than I had in years. The days blurred together. I stopped walking on the beach because Clara's sister had claimed the morning shift for her yoga sessions. I stopped sitting on the porch because the boys had turned it into their personal jungle gym. I stopped cooking because Clara had rearranged everything so thoroughly that I couldn't find my own spatula. I became invisible in my own home. And then came the dinner. It was a Saturday night, and Clara decided to host. She invited Clara's sister's boyfriend, a loud man named Derek who worked in real estate and wouldn't stop talking about market trends. She invited a couple from down the street I'd never met. She even invited the neighbors I'd been trying to get to know, which would have been nice except she introduced me as Matthew's dad who lets us stay here. Lets us. I sat at the head of my own table, surrounded by strangers and family, and felt like a ghost. Derek leaned back in his chair, gesturing with his wine glass. "Man, this place has got serious potential. You ever think about Airbnb-ing it?" Clara laughed. "Oh, we've talked about it." "We." I gripped my fork a little tighter. "Seriously," Derek continued. "With the right upgrades, you could pull in $2-3 grand a week easy during the summer. It's a goldmine sitting here." "Dad's not really the Airbnb type," Matthew said, and I appreciated the defense, even if it was weak. "Well, maybe he should be," Clara chimed in. I mean, it's a waste to have a place like this just sitting empty most of the year. Empty. As if I didn't live here. As if my retirement, my peace, my entire reason for buying this place didn't matter. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but Clara's mother cut me off. Harold, dear, you're being awfully quiet. Are you feeling all right? All eyes turned to me. I felt like a child being scolded for not participating in class. I'm fine, I said. You sure? You look tired. I was tired. Exhausted. But not from age. From this. That night, after everyone finally went to bed, I sat alone on the porch. The house was quiet for the first time in days, and I could finally hear the ocean again. I thought about Linda. About how she would have handled this. She wouldn't have let it get this far. She would have set boundaries on day one, smiled sweetly, and made it clear that love didn't mean letting people walk all over you. But I wasn't Linda. I was just Harold, the guy who'd spent his whole life fixing other people's problems and never learning how to fix his own. I stared out at the waves and felt something hard settle in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just a deep, aching sadness. They were taking everything from me. My space. My peace. My dignity. And I was letting them. But what she said the next morning over coffee nearly made me choke on my toast. Have you ever felt invisible in your own home? Drop a comment and tell me how you'd handle this, because what I overheard next changed everything. The next morning started the way they all had, with noise. Clara's mother was in the kitchen complaining about the coffee being too weak. The boys were fighting over a video game in the living room. Clara's sister was on the porch taking selfies for Instagram, posing in front of my ocean view like she'd discovered it herself. And I was in my bedroom, getting dressed slowly, wondering how much longer I could take this. I decided to make myself useful. Maybe if I stayed busy, stayed helpful, I'd feel less like an intruder in my own home. I headed to the kitchen to see if anyone wanted breakfast. That's when I heard Clara. She was standing by the sink, her phone pressed to her ear, her back to me. She didn't know I was there. The hallway was shadowed, and she was too focused on her conversation to notice me standing just around the corner. "No, I'm telling you, it's perfect," she said, her voice bright with excitement. "The location alone is worth a fortune. Right on the beach, quiet neighborhood, and honestly, the old man barely uses it." Old man. She was talking about me. I froze. "I've already been looking into it," Clara continued. "Once he's gone, we could flip this place or turn it into a rental. I looked up local Airbnb rates. We're talking 4, maybe 5,000 a week during peak season. It's literally just sitting here. Once he's gone." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Not if something happens. Not down the road. Once. Like it was inevitable. Like I was already halfway out the door. I stood there in the hallway, my hand gripping the doorframe, my heart hammering in my chest. I wanted to storm in, to confront her, to ask her who the hell she thought she was. But I couldn't move. I just listened. "Matthew doesn't see it yet," Clara said, lowering her voice slightly. "But he will. I mean, his dad's 74. How much longer is he really going to be able to manage a place like this on his own? It's honestly irresponsible for him to hold on to it." Irresponsible. My home. The place I'd worked 46 years to afford. The place where I could still feel Linda's presence in every corner. Irresponsible. "I'm just being practical," Clara continued. "And honestly, if we don't think ahead, someone else will. His sister's kids, maybe. Or the state. I'm just trying to protect what's ours." Ours. I backed away slowly, my legs shaking. I didn't want her to know I'd heard. Not yet. Not while I was still processing what she'd just said. I walked back to my bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed. Once he's gone. I thought about all the times I'd bitten my tongue over the past 2 weeks. All the times I'd smiled through my frustration, cleaned up after people who didn't respect me, and let them treat my home like a free vacation rental. I told myself it was temporary, that they'd leave soon, that I just had to be patient. But Clara wasn't planning to leave. She was planning to wait me out. I looked at the photo of Linda on my nightstand. She was smiling in that picture, her hair blowing in the wind, her eyes full of life. I could almost hear her voice. "Harry, what are you going to do about this?" For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than sadness. I felt resolve. That afternoon, I played the part. I smiled at Clara when she asked if I wanted lunch. I nodded politely when her mother complained about the humidity. I even laughed when the boys accidentally broke one of my porch chairs, waving it off like it was no big deal. But inside, my mind was working. I wasn't a violent man. I wasn't even particularly confrontational. But I'd spent 46 years solving problems, finding the broken part, figuring out how to fix it, and making sure it didn't break again. This was no different. Clara thought I was old, weak, too polite to fight back. She was about to learn otherwise. That evening, I told Matthew I needed to run into town for a few errands. "Need any help, Dad?" he asked, glancing up from his phone. "No, son. Just some paperwork stuff. Retirement forms. Boring." He nodded and went back to scrolling. I drove to the office of Gerald Weston, the attorney who'd handled Linda's will 6 years ago. He was semi-retired himself now, but he still took appointments for old clients. When I walked in, he looked up from his desk and smiled. "Harold Drayton. It's been a while. What brings you in?" I sat down across from him and folded my hands in my lap. "I need to make some changes," I said. "To my property." Gerald raised an eyebrow. "What kind of changes?" "The kind that makes sure no one can take advantage of me when I'm gone. Or before." He leaned forward, suddenly serious. "Tell me what's going on." I told him everything. The uninvited guests. The disrespect. The overheard phone call. Clara's plans for my house. By the time I finished, Gerald was shaking his head. "Family," he muttered. "Sometimes they're worse than strangers." "Can you help me?" I asked. "Absolutely." He pulled out a notepad. "Let's start with updating your will. Make sure everything's ironclad. Then we'll look at your property deed. If you want to protect this place, we can add stipulations. Make it so no one can sell or rent it without meeting certain conditions. We can even set up a trust if you want." For the next hour, we worked through the details. Gerald drafted documents. I signed papers. And slowly, piece by piece, I built a wall around my home that Clara would never be able to break through. When I left his office, I felt lighter. Not happy, exactly, but purposeful. I had one more stop to make. I drove to the marina and found Briggs, a contractor I'd known for years. I'd helped him fix his boat engine once when he couldn't afford a mechanic, and he'd told me if I ever needed anything, I just had to ask. "Harold," he called when he saw me walking down the dock. "What brings you out here?" "I need a favor," I said. "Name it. How fast can you build a fence?" He grinned. "How fast do you need it?" 2 days. "What kind of fence are we talking about?" 6 feet tall, white, clean. And I want it to separate the main house from the back shed. Briggs studied me for a moment, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was a smart man. He didn't ask questions. "I can do it," he said. "When do you want me to start?" "Monday morning." He held out his hand. "Consider it done." I shook it. That night, I went back to the cottage and had dinner with my unwanted houseguests. Clara served lasagna she'd made in my kitchen. Everyone laughed and talked over each other, and I sat quietly at the end of the table, smiling like I didn't have a care in the world. But inside, I was counting down the hours. The fence went up on a Tuesday morning. I stood on my porch with my coffee, watching the construction crew hammer post after post into the ground, and I couldn't help but smile. Behind me, through the window, I could hear Clara's voice rising in pitch, that particular tone she used when things weren't going her way. My son Matthew was trying to calm her down, but his words were drowned out by her indignation. You're probably wondering how a 74-year-old retired engineer ended up building a fence to lock his own family out of his beach house. Trust me, I wondered the same thing. But sometimes, when people mistake your kindness for weakness, you have to remind them that you still have teeth. Let me back up. My name is Harold Drayton, and 6 months ago, I bought a little white cottage in Oakshore Bay with money I'd saved for 46 years. It had peeling blue shutters, a porch that faced the ocean, and enough peace to make me forget every late night I'd spent fixing broken machinery at Harrison Industries. After my wife Linda passed 6 years back, I promised myself I'd find a place where I could hear her laughter in the wind and feel her presence in every sunset. Oakshore was that place. For 3 weeks, it was paradise. I'd wake up to the sound of waves, walk barefoot on the sand, and spend my evenings reading on the porch with nothing but seagulls for company. No deadlines. No stress. Just me and the memories of a woman who made life worth living. Then my son called. Have you ever had someone in your family completely overstay their welcome? Drop a comment below and let me know, because what happened next will make your blood boil. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Dad, Matthew said on that phone call, his voice cheerful and light. Clara and I thought we'd visit for a few days. You know, to see your new place. I should have heard the warning bells right then. That phrase, for a few days, should have been written in red ink with flashing lights around it. But I was lonely, and Matthew was my only son, so I said the words that would come back to haunt me. Of course. You're both always welcome. They showed up that Saturday in a gleaming black SUV that looked like it cost more than my first house. I was on the porch waiting, wearing my good shirt, excited to show them around. The engine cut off, and Matthew stepped out first, giving me that familiar grin that reminded me of when he was 10 years old. Then Clara emerged. Then their twin boys. Then Clara's teenage niece. Then Clara's sister. And finally, I'm not making this up, Clara's mother, a woman who looked at my cottage the way you'd look at a gas station bathroom. 7 people climbed out of that SUV. My beach house had 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. Dad, I hope it's okay, Matthew said, laughing in that nervous way that told me he knew exactly how not okay this was. They just needed a little getaway too. I stood there, frozen, watching this parade of relatives haul suitcases and coolers and beach toys up my porch steps like they were moving in. My peaceful retirement cottage suddenly looked like a refugee camp. But what could I say? I was old, alone, and too polite to tell my own son he'd crossed a line. So I smiled. Sure, I said, my jaw tight. The more the merrier. Merry is the last word I'd use to describe what came next. Within 2 hours, my quiet sanctuary turned into chaos. Clara's mother complained that the guest room mattress was too firm. Her sister set up a Bluetooth speaker by the porch and started blasting music that made my teeth hurt. The twin boys tracked sand through every room like they were on a mission to coat my floors in beach. And Clara walked into my kitchen like she owned it. She opened drawers, rearranged my utensils, moved my coffee mugs to a different cabinet, and even had the nerve to label my food containers with a label maker she'd brought from home. Dad, you really should get a dishwasher installed, she said the next morning, sipping coffee from Linda's favorite mug, the one with the faded sunflower on it that I hadn't let anyone else touch in 6 years. This place has so much potential if we just updated it a bit. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not anger yet. Just a deep, quiet sadness that someone could be so blind to what mattered. "It's fine as it is, Clara," I said softly. She gave me that polite little smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes, and nodded. "We'll see." That night, I sat on the porch alone while the house buzzed with noise behind me. I stared at the waves rolling in under the moonlight and thought about Linda. She would have known what to do. She always did. But she wasn't here, and I was too tired to fight. If I'd known what I was about to overhear a week later, I would have kicked them out that very first night. What would you have done if your family showed up uninvited with a whole crew? Would you have spoken up right away, or would you have stayed silent like I did? Drop your answer in the comments. I need to know I'm not the only one who's been through this. Monday morning arrived with the sound of truck engines. I was already awake, sitting on my porch with my coffee, watching the sun climb over the water. The air was cool and clean, and for a moment, I felt the peace I'd been missing for weeks. Then I heard it, the rumble of heavy vehicles turning onto my street. 3 trucks pulled into my driveway. Briggs stepped out of the first one, wearing his work boots and a knowing grin. "Morning, Harold," he called. "Ready to get started?" "Ready as I'll ever be," I said. Behind me, I heard movement inside the house. Footsteps. Confused voices. The front door swung open, and Clara appeared, still in her bathrobe, her face twisted in confusion. "Dad, what's going on?" she asked. "Who are these people?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Just a little project I've been planning." "What kind of project?" "You'll see." Her eyes narrowed, but before she could press further, Briggs and his crew started unloading lumber, posts, and rolls of chain-link fencing from the trucks. The sound of power tools firing up filled the air, and I watched Clara's confusion turn to alarm. "Dad," she said, her voice sharp now. "What are you doing?" I stood up, walked past her to the door, and paused. "I'm making some improvements. Don't worry about it." I went inside, leaving her standing there, speechless. For the next 2 days, the crew worked non-stop. They dug post holes, poured concrete, hammered rails, and stretched fencing across the property. I stayed out of their way, offering cold water and sandwiches, and watching Clara grow more agitated by the hour. She cornered me in the kitchen that first afternoon. "Dad, seriously, what is this fence for?" "Privacy," I said simply. "Privacy from what?" I met her eyes. "From people who don't respect boundaries." Her jaw tightened. She wanted to argue, but she didn't know how. Not yet. Matthew tried a softer approach. "Dad, if you wanted us to leave, you could have just said something. You didn't have to do all this." "Did I say I wanted you to leave?" I asked. He blinked. "Well, no, but..." "Then don't worry about it." By Tuesday afternoon, the fence was finished. It was beautiful, really, a clean, 6-foot-high white barrier that ran from the front edge of my property, curved around the main house, and ended at the tree line near the beach. It enclosed the cottage, the porch, the front yard, and my little garden. Everything that mattered. On the outside of the fence was the old shed I used to store tools and beach equipment. It was small, barely big enough for a cot and a chair, with one tiny window and no air conditioning. That's where I pointed when Clara came storming out to confront me. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "A fence," I said calmly. "I can see it's a fence. Why does it cut us off from the house?" I looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't smile. I didn't soften. I just spoke the truth. "Because this is my house, Clara. Mine. And I'm done sharing it with people who don't appreciate it." Her face went pale. "You're kicking us out?" "No," I said. "I'm giving you options." You can stay in the shed out back if you'd like. Or you can find a hotel. Oakshore has some nice ones. The shed, she repeated, her voice rising. There's no air conditioning. No bathroom. Then I guess you'll have to figure something out. Matthew stepped forward, looking lost. Dad, come on. This is extreme. Is it? I turned to him. Your wife showed up to my house uninvited with her entire family. She rearranged my kitchen, criticized my home, and treated me like a burden. And when I overheard her on the phone, talking about turning this place into a rental the moment I'm gone, I realized something. Matthew's face went white. What are you talking about? Ask her, I said quietly. Clara's mouth opened, but no words came out. I walked past them both, through the gate in my beautiful new fence, and locked it behind me. That night, I slept in my own bed, in my own house, with the windows open and the sound of the ocean filling the room. For the first time in weeks, no one was snoring through the walls. No one was arguing in the next room. No one was taking what wasn't theirs. I slept like a man who'd finally remembered he had a spine. The next morning, I woke to the sound of car doors slamming. I looked out the window and saw them loading the SUV, suitcases, coolers, beach chairs, all of it. Clara's mother looked furious. Her sister looked annoyed. The boys didn't seem to care either way. Clara stood by the passenger door, arms crossed, staring at the fence like it had personally betrayed her. Matthew knocked on my gate. I walked out onto the porch, coffee in hand. We're leaving, Dad, he said. Safe travels, I replied. He hesitated, looking like he wanted to say more, but Clara called his name from the car. He sighed, turned, and walked away. I watched them drive off, the SUV disappearing down the street, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. But the real surprise wasn't the fence. It was what Clara did next. Would you have built that fence, or would you have handled it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because the story isn't over yet. The first week after they left was perfect. I fell back into my routine like slipping into an old, comfortable pair of shoes. Morning coffee on the porch. Long walks on the beach. Afternoons spent reading or tinkering with small repairs around the house. The fence stood tall and white, a quiet reminder that I'd finally taken back what was mine. But I knew Clara. She wasn't the type to let things go. 3 days after they left, my phone rang. It was Matthew. Hey, Dad, he said, his voice careful. How are you doing? Good, son. Real good. That's great. He paused. Look, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. Clara and I have been talking, and I realize we should have asked before bringing everyone. It wasn't fair to you. I softened a little. I appreciate that, Matthew. Yeah. Another pause. Clara's pretty upset, though. I imagine she is. She thinks you overreacted. I set my coffee down. Do you think I overreacted? He was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, Dad, I don't know. But I do know I should have stood up for you more. I should have seen what was happening. That was enough for me. You're a good man, Matthew. You just married a woman who doesn't see the world the way you do. He sighed. Yeah, I'm starting to realize that. We talked for a few more minutes, and when we hung up, I felt cautiously hopeful. Maybe this would blow over. Maybe Clara would move on. Maybe I could finally have peace. But 2 days later, I got a call from Gerald Weston. Harold, we need to talk, he said, his voice tense. What's wrong? I just got a very interesting phone call from a woman named Clara Drayton. She claims to be your daughter-in-law. My stomach dropped. What did she want? She wanted to know about your will. About the property deed. She said she was just making sure everything was in order for when you pass. I closed my eyes. What did you tell her? Nothing. Attorney-client privilege. But Harold, she's digging. And she's not being subtle about it. What do you think she's planning? I don't know. But if I were you, I'd keep a close eye on any documents you have around the house. And I'd make sure your will is locked down tight. I thanked him and hung up. That evening, I went through my files. Everything was in order. My will, the deed, the trust Gerald had helped me set up. But knowing Clara was out there, scheming, plotting, trying to find a way to take what wasn't hers, made my blood boil. I decided to take action. The next morning, I called Briggs again. Harold, he answered. What now? You want me to build a moat? I laughed despite myself. Not quite. But I do need another favor. Shoot. I need security cameras. Front of the house, back of the house, and one pointed at the gate. You expecting trouble? Just being cautious. Say no more. I'll have them installed by Friday. 3 days later, I had cameras covering every angle of my property. They fed to an app on my phone, and I could check them anytime, anywhere. It felt a little paranoid, but after everything that had happened, I wasn't taking chances. And it was a good thing I didn't. 2 weeks after they left, I got a notification on my phone. Motion detected at the front gate. I opened the app and watched the live feed. It was Clara. She was standing at the gate, looking around like she was making sure no one was watching. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a key. My spare key, the one I'd given Matthew years ago in case of emergencies. She tried it in the lock. It didn't work. I changed the locks the day after they left. She cursed under her breath, then tried the gate latch. Also locked. I watched her pace back and forth for a minute, clearly frustrated, before she pulled out her phone and made a call. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but her body language said enough. She was angry. After a few minutes, she got back in her car and drove away. I saved the footage. That night, I called Gerald again. She tried to break into my property, I said. Do you have proof? Video footage. Good. Keep it. If she tries anything else, we'll have grounds for a restraining order. I didn't think it would come to that. But I was ready if it did. A few days later, I got another call from Matthew. Dad, I need to tell you something, he said, his voice strained. What is it? Clara found some documents in our house. Old papers from when you bought the cottage. She's been studying them, trying to find loopholes. Loopholes for what? She thinks if she can prove you're not mentally competent, she can challenge your decisions. Maybe even get power of attorney. I felt my hands shake. She's trying to have me declared incompetent. I don't think she'll actually go through with it, Matthew said quickly. But she's talking about it. And Dad, I'm worried. She's not thinking straight. She's obsessed. What are you going to do? I asked. He was quiet for a long time. I don't know yet. But I'm not going to let her hurt you. When we hung up, I sat on my porch and stared at the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and I thought about how quickly things had changed. A month ago, I'd been a lonely old man grateful for company. Now I was a man fighting to protect everything he'd worked for. But I wasn't scared. I was ready. Because when the trucks rolled in that Friday, Clara was about to learn that I wasn't the helpless old man she thought I was. Have you ever had someone underestimate you, only to realize too late that you were 10 steps ahead? Tell me in the comments, because what happens next is going to blow your mind. Friday morning came with the sound of hammering. I'd hired Briggs for one more job, reinforcing the gate, adding a stronger lock, and installing a security light that would flood the front yard if anyone came near the property after dark. Clara had made her move, and now I was making mine. I was standing on the porch, watching the crew work, when my phone rang. It was Matthew. "Dad, don't hang up," he said immediately. "I'm listening. Clara's on her way to your house. She's furious. She found out about the cameras." "How did she?" "I told her." I paused. "Why?" "Because I'm done lying for her, Dad. I'm done pretending this is okay. She's been talking about hiring a lawyer, about fighting you for the house, and I can't be part of it anymore." I felt a weight lift off my chest. "Thank you, son." "She's going to try to talk her way in," Matthew continued. "She's going to apologize, cry, whatever it takes. Don't fall for it." "I won't." "Good. And Dad?" "Yeah. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know you are." 20 minutes later, Clara's car pulled into the driveway. She got out slowly, wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something soft and pastel, probably chosen to look non-threatening. Her hair was down, her makeup subtle. She looked like she was going to a church picnic, not a confrontation. I stayed on my side of the fence, arms crossed. "Hi, Dad," she called, her voice sweet. Too sweet. I didn't answer. She walked up to the gate and smiled. "Can we talk?" "We're talking right now." "I mean inside. Please." "No." Her smile faltered. "Dad, I know things got out of hand. I know we overstayed our welcome. But I want to make it right." "By trying to break into my house? By calling my attorney behind my back? By planning to have me declared incompetent?" Her face went white. "Matthew told you." "He did." "Dad, that's not." "I wasn't actually going to." "Yes, you were." I stepped closer to the gate, close enough to see the panic in her eyes. "You were going to wait until I died, or until you could convince someone I was too old to take care of myself, and then you were going to take this place, turn it into a rental, make money off the home I bought with 46 years of hard work." "That's not fair," she said, her voice breaking. "I was just trying to think ahead, to be practical." "Practical," I repeated. "You know what's practical, Clara? Respecting people. Not treating them like obstacles in your way. Not looking at someone's life and seeing dollar signs." She tried a different approach, softening her tone. "Dad, I'm sorry. Really. I made mistakes. But we're family. Doesn't that count for something? Family means showing up when someone needs you. It means respect. It means gratitude. You didn't show me any of those things." Her face hardened. "So that's it? You're just going to shut me out forever?" "No," I said. "I'm going to protect what's mine. There's a difference." She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second she realized she'd lost. Her shoulders sagged. Her jaw clenched. The mask slipped, and I saw the real Clara, the one who saw people as tools, homes as investments, and kindness as weakness. "You're going to regret this," she said quietly. "Maybe," I replied. "But at least I'll regret it in peace." She turned and walked back to her car without another word. I watched her drive away, her tires kicking up gravel, and I felt nothing but relief. Briggs walked up beside me, wiping his hands on a rag. "That her. That's her. She give you trouble?" "She tried." He grinned. "Well, if she comes back, she's not getting through that gate. I guarantee it." I clapped him on the shoulder. "I appreciate it, Briggs." That evening, I sat on my porch and watched the sunset. The new security light hummed softly in the background, and the fence stood tall and strong, a barrier between me and the chaos I'd finally escaped. For the first time in a month, I felt like I could breathe. But I knew the story wasn't over yet. Because 3 days later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Matthew. I opened it slowly, half expecting another apology, another explanation. But what I found inside was something I didn't expect. It was the truth. Do you think Clara will give up, or is she just getting started? Comment below with your prediction, because what Matthew wrote in that letter changed everything. The letter sat on my kitchen table for an hour before I opened it. I stared at the envelope, at Matthew's handwriting. Messy, hurried, the way he used to write when he was a kid rushing through homework. Part of me didn't want to know what was inside. Part of me was afraid it would be more bad news, more drama, more betrayal. But I couldn't leave it unopened. I poured myself a glass of water, sat down, and carefully tore the envelope along the seam. Inside were 3 pages, handwritten, folded neatly. I unfolded them and began to read. Dad, I don't know where to start, so I'm just going to say it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for bringing Clara and her family to your house without asking. I'm sorry for letting them treat you like a guest in your own home. I'm sorry for not standing up for you when I should have. But most of all, I'm sorry for being blind. I didn't see what Clara was doing. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to admit it. For years, I've told myself that her ambition was a good thing. That her drive to plan ahead, to think about the future, was smart. But somewhere along the way, I stopped noticing that her plans didn't include respect. They didn't include gratitude. They only included what she wanted. After we left your house, things got worse. Clara was furious about the fence. She kept saying you'd humiliated her, that you were being cruel, that you were punishing her for trying to help. I believed her at first. I thought maybe you'd overreacted. But then I found something. I was looking for an old tax document in her desk, and I found a folder. Inside were printouts, listings for vacation rental properties, market analysis reports for Oakshore Bay, and notes. Pages and pages of notes about your house. About square footage, potential renovations, projected income. She'd been planning this for months, Dad. Maybe longer. There was even a draft email to a real estate agent, asking about the process for selling a property on behalf of a family member who may not be able to make decisions independently. She was planning to have you declared incompetent. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She just said I was too emotional to see the bigger picture. She said you were old, that the house was wasted on you, and that someone had to think about our future. Our future. Not yours. Ours. I asked her if she ever cared about you at all, or if you were just an obstacle in her way. She didn't answer. She just packed a bag and left. We've been separated for 2 weeks now. I don't know if we'll get back together. Honestly, I don't know if I want to. I keep thinking about Mom. About how she would have never let this happen. She would have seen through Clara from the beginning. But I didn't. I was so focused on making Clara happy that I forgot about the people who actually mattered. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I know I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I see it now. I see what she did. I see what I let happen. And I'm not going to let it happen again. I love you, Dad. And I'm sorry I forgot to show it. Matthew. I set the letter down and stared at it for a long time. My hands were shaking. Not from anger. Not from sadness. From something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Matthew had finally seen the truth. He'd finally chosen the right side. And even though it had taken too long, even though the damage had been done, it mattered. It mattered that he'd tried. I picked up my phone and called him. He answered on the first ring. Dad. I got your letter, I said. Yeah. His voice was thick, like he'd been crying. I meant every word. I know you did. I'm so sorry. I know that too. We were quiet for a moment. and I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, trying to hold it together. "Can I come see you?" he asked. "Not to stay. Just to visit. To talk." "I need to see you, Dad." I thought about it. About the fence. About the cameras. About all the walls I built to keep people out. But Matthew wasn't people. He was my son. "Yeah," I said. "You can come." "Really? Really?" He came the next weekend. He showed up alone, carrying a bag of groceries and a toolbox. "Thought I could help with some repairs," he said. "If you'll let me." I let him. We spent the day fixing the porch railing, repainting the shutters, and replacing a loose board on the deck. We didn't talk much at first, just worked side by side the way we used to when he was a kid and I'd let him help with projects around the house. But eventually, he spoke. "I don't know how I let it get that bad," he said quietly. "I used to be better than that." "You still are," I said. "You just forgot for a while." "How do you do it?" he asked. "How do you forgive people?" I set down my paintbrush and looked at him. "Forgiveness isn't about letting people off the hook, son. It's about deciding that holding on to the anger hurts you more than it hurts them. You made mistakes, but you owned them. That's more than most people do." He nodded, his eyes red. That night, we sat on the porch and watched the sunset. The ocean was calm, the sky painted in gold and pink, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had my son back. "Do you think you'll ever let Clara back in your life?" he asked. I thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe someday. But not until she understands what she did wrong. And not until I know she's changed." "That's fair. What about you?" I asked. "Do you think you'll get back together?" He shook his head. "No. I don't think so. I don't think I can trust her anymore. And I don't think she's capable of seeing people the way I need her to." "I'm sorry, son." "Don't be. You did me a favor. You showed me who she really was. And you reminded me who I'm supposed to be." When he left the next morning, he hugged me tight. "I'll be back next month," he said. "If that's okay." "It's more than okay." I watched him drive away, and I realized something. Peace had finally chosen me back. Have you ever had to cut someone out of your life, only to rebuild a relationship with someone else? Tell me your story in the comments, because this journey isn't over yet. 3 months have passed since that day. I wake up every morning to the sound of the ocean, just like I always dreamed I would. The cottage is quiet again. The fence still stands, white and clean, a reminder of the boundaries I learned to set. The cameras are still active, though I rarely check them anymore. I don't need to. The people who mattered have learned their lesson, and the people who didn't are no longer part of my life. Matthew visits once a month now. Sometimes more. He brings groceries, helps with repairs, and stays for dinner. We talk about everything, about Linda, about his childhood, about the mistakes we've both made and the lessons we've learned. He's dating someone new, a woman named Sarah who teaches 2nd grade and volunteers at an animal shelter. She's kind, genuine, and the first time she met me, she brought homemade cookies and asked if she could see photos of Linda. I liked her immediately. Matthew and Clara's divorce was finalized last month. He didn't fight for much, just wanted it over. Clara kept the house, the car, and most of their savings. Matthew kept his dignity. "I don't need things, Dad," he told me. "I just need peace." I understood that better than anyone. As for Clara, I haven't heard from her since that day at the gate. Matthew tells me she moved to another state, started a new job, and remarried within 6 months. He doesn't talk to her anymore. Neither do I. Some people are meant to be lessons, not lifelong companions. Clara taught me that the hard way. But she also taught me something else. She taught me that kindness without boundaries is just weakness in disguise. That being polite doesn't mean being a doormat. That sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is say no. These days, my life is simple. I spend my mornings walking on the beach, collecting shells and watching the seagulls dive for fish. I spend my afternoons reading on the porch or fixing small things around the house. A leaky faucet, a squeaky hinge, a loose floorboard. I spend my evenings watching the sunset, thinking about Linda, and feeling grateful that I finally found the peace she always wanted for me. I've made friends in Oakshore. There's Margaret, the widow next door who brings me casseroles and borrows my toolbox. There's Tom, the retired fisherman who teaches me how to cast a line properly. There's Father Miguel from the church down the road, who stops by sometimes just to sit and talk about life. I'm not lonely anymore. I'm just alone when I choose to be. And that makes all the difference. Last week, I got a letter from Clara's mother. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a short note. Harold, I owe you an apology. I didn't see what Clara was doing until it was too late. I'm sorry for being part of the problem. I hope you found the peace you deserve. I read it twice, then folded it and put it in a drawer. I didn't need to respond. The apology was enough. This morning, I sat on my porch with my coffee and watched the sunrise. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, the waves were gentle, and the air smelled like salt and freedom. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who worked himself to exhaustion, who said yes when he meant no, who let people take and take until there was nothing left. That man is gone. In his place is someone stronger. Someone who knows his worth. Someone who understands that peace isn't something people give you, it's something you protect with quiet strength. I thought about Linda. About how she used to say, "Harry, you're too kind for your own good." She was right. But I'm learning. I'm learning that love doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. That family doesn't mean entitlement. That sometimes, the loudest form of justice is simply reclaiming your space and refusing to apologize for it. I finished my coffee, stood up, and walked down to the beach. The sand was cool under my feet, the water clear and endless. I stood at the edge and let the waves wash over my toes, and I smiled. This is what I worked for. This is what I sacrificed for. This is what I almost lost. But I didn't lose it. I fought for it. And I won. As I turned to walk back to the house, I saw Matthew's car pulling into the driveway. He waved, and I waved back. He'd brought Sarah with him. She was carrying a pie. I smiled. Life is good. Not perfect, but good. And that's more than enough. Because peace isn't something you find. It's something you build, one boundary at a time. And now that I've built mine, no one's ever taking it away again. If this story touched you, if you've ever had to fight for your peace or set boundaries with people you love, drop a comment below and share your experience. Your story might inspire someone else who's going through the same thing. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about real people, real struggles, and real victories, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We post new stories every week, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Hit that like button if Harold's journey resonated with you, and remember, peace isn't given, it's claimed. Thank you for being part of this family. Until next time.